Welcome back, everyone. I am Tracy Lewis with We Are Winter Garden, and I am here with Pastor Scott, who is the founder, CEO, and president of Matthew's Hope, as well as Shelley Bradford, who is the vice president and executive director of Matthew's Hope. So we're in episode 14 of Straight Talk, No BS with Matthew's Hope, where we are going to be discussing the meaning of hiding in plain sight. But before we get into that topic, Scott, you were recently invited to appear on WFTV's Central Florida Spotlight Show. Tell us how that went.
It went well. If people want to see it, it's actually, we have a link to it on our Facebook page. I'm assuming we'll probably have a link to it from our internet site to our website as well. But it went very well. I mean, part of the reason for going on the show was in discussions with Greg Wormuth and that, was that nobody seems to be sounding the alarm on what's going on. And I think people really need to sit up and pay attention. With the economy being what it is, with the housing crisis being what it is, they really need to sit up and pay attention on what role are they going to play in preventing what they say they don't want to see, which is more homelessness on our streets.
Wow. Right. And Shelley, there's construction happening in Winter Garden here. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what's going on?
Yeah, it's actually real exciting. We are expanding our medical site. We're going to now have a true mental health office with, was it 3 more exam rooms?
Two more exam rooms in addition to what we have. Yeah.
So 4 total exam rooms. So we just found out that we should be able to paint this Friday, which is exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Anything needed specifically for that medical center to open?
I think our greatest need right now is we are still looking for mental health care counselors to either contract with us if they're open to that, to serve our population we're working with, or to we're also looking for a psychiatric nurse practitioner to work with if we can find that. So we want to put that out there, obviously, out into the universe and people to hear. And I also want to tell people, when they hear us saying expansion, I think sometimes they think, oh, Matthew's Hope must be doing really good financially. No, we're expanding out of necessity.
Right. If you really think about it, expansion isn't great for you guys.
Yeah. It's like when people say, hey, you're growing, that's fantastic. It's like, no, that means we simply are seeing a bigger need.
Yeah. Now, do we need any exam tables or anything, or are we all set?
I think we're pretty set on that.
Okay.
Advent Health has been great in getting together some things for us. One of our new our board members, Parker Pridgeon, is now on board with us. He's the CEO of Apopka, and he was able to secure some things for us, so it's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Nice.
And how is this expansion helpful to the guests that you guys serve?
Well, I think that, mental health is playing a much bigger part in what we do than ever before. It's always been an issue. I've always said that if you didn't have a mental health care issue or mental health problem before becoming homeless, you will once you become homeless.
Can imagine
and I think the pandemic really exacerbated that. It's sometimes just simple things. I think that as I share with people, we were all separated from one another and isolated, and it took a toll on most of us, one level or another. And I said, imagine being homeless now, and even further isolated in a world that you're isolated anyhow.
Right.
And we're seeing that, and it's not really being addressed. Mental health is not really being addressed anywhere, and I think that if we don't address it, what you see is nothing compared to what you're going to see.
So I've heard you mention hiding in plain sights a few times. What does that mean, hiding in plain sights?
It really came about is, often homeless people are treated poorly simply by how they look.
Definitely.
I've actually witnessed, not just too long ago, where a couple of young guys, I'm guessing late teens, early 20s, were walking by a homeless guy that was sitting on a bus bench. And for no reason whatsoever, as they're passing him, one just hauls off and hits him. Wow. I'd love to tell you that that's an uncommon thing. What I'm going to tell you, it's way too common.
It's unbelievable.
And of course, you have people. We're in about 15 different municipalities now, and the biggest complaint all the time is, what about these homeless people?
Right.
And my feelings were, if you couldn't tell they were homeless, what difference might that make? And so 2 things are actually accomplished by this. is number one, we've taken someone, we started to rebuild their dignity by having the haircuts and the showers and the laundry being done and getting their basic medical care taken care of and things like that. But I think sometimes the community fails to see the benefit they get out of our efforts. And that's the fact that there's homeless people all over our communities and we're not seeing them. You know, I had to laugh a couple of years ago. There was a gentleman, I was downtown Winter Garden, and he yelled over at me and said, "Hey, Pastor Scott," he said, I don't know what you guys are doing, but it's like the homeless have just disappeared. And the funny part about it was that he was sharing a cup of coffee with one of our homeless guys that was on the other end of the bench. And I kind of looked at him, and my guy looked at me and like, am I going to out him? And I said, yes, kind of like we're hiding them in plain sight. And that's really where it came about, is that if they're here and they look like everyone else and they don't appear to be a nuisance to anybody else, then chances are that's something the community will like. The downside to that is then sometimes people believe that the problem is gone. They don't understand the crisis that's taking place right now. And that affects us in a big way, in the way we're looked at and the help that we receive from the community.
Right. So you guys are helping not only the guests, but the community and the businesses, hiding them in plain sight. But then there's kind of a downside to that because they think everything's peachy.
Yeah,
So,
too often.
So I know in Brevard, you've mentioned before that it doesn't look like a homelessness or campus.
Yeah.
So why is that important?
Well, I think for us
why do we do that?
One, we want to be a good neighbor. Number one, we want to be a good neighbor, and so when people pass either our housing or happen to pass by our campus in Brevard or what have you, that we want them to, when they pass by, go, wow, that place is gorgeous. I hear there's homeless people there.
Right.
I want them to question that. I want us to do everything with excellence to the point where it doesn't look like what the expectation is of the general public. And I think that's important too, because again, that's part of being a good neighbor, is having our locations. I mean, we pass by our houses in Winter Garden, and I will put those up against any houses in Winter Garden, and we're only a few blocks from downtown. And they're beautiful and they're clean, and that's a goal that we like to keep in all our properties.
I feel it's a shame that the community as a whole, and I'm even speaking of myself because we all can be judgmental at times, but that's why I love this podcast, to help people realize perspectives and everything else. But that if somebody has a haircut and is dressed nicely versus maybe a month from now he doesn't have a haircut or she doesn't have a haircut and she's a little bit dirty, and how they'll turn the cheek and then they'll just complain about it or whatnot. So Shelley, we're here in the boutique. We have shoppers behind us, and I love that. Can you tell a little bit more about this space?
Yes. So we are in the Matthew's Hope Chest boutique. A lot of people will ask, do you have a thrift store? And we don't. But the boutique is actually furniture that we have furniture in here. We have crafts that our homeless men and women have made or repurposed. And we always want people to come in and, they're buying a new house or they want to redecorate. We want them to think of us first to come in here, and I do for my own house.
Nice.
All the time, yeah.
That's great.
Well, I think the cool thing about it too is our folks are making some pretty cool home decor.
Right.
But the furniture here, we do all hardwoods, and what I tell people that when our furniture falls off the back of the truck, go back and pick it up. It's just got a little more character now, a lot like the people we serve. When theirs falls off the back of the truck, just keep driving because there's not enough to pick up. And it does throw people off though sometimes. You and I were talking about this a while back because they're expecting a thrift store, number one. And they're going, well, I don't see any really cheap thrift store type stuff. Well, that's not what it is. This is a furniture and home decor store with a boutique. I mean, it's the idea again is to show the quality of work that are the homeless men and women we serve can do, but also it's a place for them to work and earn a place in housing along with the shop, the store, what have you. It's not uncommon to be here and actually being served by someone who's currently either living on the streets or has recently come off the streets.
That's very impressive that you guys do that and bringing that dignity to them and helping them take those steps to feel so great about themselves and using their hands and whatnot.
Well, the cool thing too is we get to learn their work ethic as well, because that's important. We're the only people that I know of that's doing a background check on every person we serve. But we're also drug testing as well for those living in our houses and working in our establishments. And I think this is important because when somebody sometimes calls me and says, Scott, who do you have that can pass the drug test? That has a skill set and a strong work ethic or is teachable, then I can often refer to someone and say, here we go. And often they're some of the best employees because they realize their chances are limited. And, if they're 15 minutes to 8, they're late.
Yeah.
Okay, they think a whole different way once they're with us.
I love that. And they can feel safe. The community can feel safe coming in here.
Right.
And they're supporting you guys in another way. So Shelley, do you feel that other organizations are touching on the hiding in plain sight? Do you feel that they're helping the homeless do that?
Yeah, I don't feel like they do it well. I feel like they do enough to get the homeless people to the next day, but they don't do it well enough to where, if you just look around Winter Garden, as Scott said earlier, you don't really see a lot of homeless people. We have them. But then you go downtown Orlando and you clearly see that there's homeless people and they're dirty and not well kept. So I don't feel like people have the same vision or the same, what's the word? I just don't feel like people do it as well as we do. Not that I want to talk bad about them, but I just feel like we have a different ministry and a different mission to help our community as well.
I feel like you guys have like stepping stones where you're not just feeding them or you're not just putting them in a home or you're not just putting them in a hotel room, but you're like, okay, what's next? What are you going to work for? Like you said before, what is your skill? We'll help you figure that out to do those stepping stones so they get off the street and preferably stay off the street and
we want to have an end game.
themselves.
We want to have an end game of some kind for these folks and something
Not just
they're
something
working towards.
temporary.
Well, and again, you touched on it, and so did Shelley a little bit. There's a difference between making sure someone has clothes on and building dignity. We're very careful, and it was very purposely done through our whole ministry, very careful to make sure that we're not going to provide something we wouldn't wear ourselves.
Right.
We're not going to serve food that we wouldn't eat ourselves. We're not trying to get you through the night. We're not trying to get in. We're not trying to make it just easier being homeless. We're trying to build dignity within you so that maybe you have an opportunity to better your life in one way or another and possibly work your way towards that life of independence and self-sustainability we always talk about.
Right. So it eventually will help them go to that next step. You guys helping them hide in plain sight. That haircut. They're like, oh wow, I feel great. I look great. Maybe I can do something great.
Look, it's crazy. It's crazy when you see the transformation of people. Having quite a bit of new staff lately that have gotten to see these folks come out of a haircut.
Right.
And the staff is in tears because they hear little things. We had one just the other day in Brevard, our hair salon, and she got all done and the stylist, and I did say stylist, not just someone cutting hair, a stylist, had blown her hair out in the whole bit. And when she spun the chair around to look in the mirror, the woman, Jennifer, got a tear in her eye and she said, I haven't seen that woman or I haven't seen that girl in a very long time.
She looked so different.
Yeah, and it was
so
like,
different. Yeah.
Sometimes they walk in back in the outreach center and after they had their hair cut and shower and fresh clothes, people don't recognize it.
Right.
That's how different it is. It's not just the fact that they're clean, but you'll notice the shoulders drop back, the eye contact starts, and that's the start of the next step to the rest of their lives.
That's great. So everybody watching, how can the community help you guys hide them in plain sight? What can we do?
Clothing donations, for
and
sure.
what type of clothing? Because we talked about we wouldn't give them something that we wouldn't wear ourselves.
So with our new staff, a lot of times what I will do to help them understand, because some people don't understand why we're so picky. So with our new staff, I'll say, what would you wear to go camping? Or one thing I've heard Scott say many times is, what would you put on that if you woke up the next day that it wouldn't look like you just got into a tussle with somebody? Something. So I really try to focus on, what would you wear to go camping? You want to make sure that it's something that's going to be comfortable, something that is going to be fresh. It's not going to be dressy, because dress clothes are not going to help our guests.
Not at the stage.
If we ever get them to the point to where they're going on a job interview, we're going to get them their specific clothes.
Gotcha.
So,
I mean, even to the point that we'll take them shopping.
Okay.
yeah.
Get a suit. There's nothing worse than men in particular when they're wearing a suit that belonged to somebody else. And you see that big gap off their
Yeah.
neck because they've got a size 18 neck shirt and they've only got a 15-inch neck.
Yeah.
If, the shoulders are either drooping or so tight they can barely walk. And we want them to feel proud and comfortable. So by the time they need that type of clothing, we've already witnessed the transformation, and they're ready for that type of clothing. And we want them to feel good about it. So it's worth the investment. I think one of the challenges that we have is that people bring us all kinds of stuff that we don't need.
Okay.
And it's very expensive for us to have to go through it all just to have it redonated. I think last year we donated $1.5 million worth of stuff through the Salvation Army and that they had to come pick up.
Yeah.
And people will sit there and look at our sign and it says, these are the things we need and want. And look at the camera. And the funny part is when you'll see someone like this kind of go,
Oh,
Right.
like they're
no.
creeping
can't
around.
see
What?
us.
And you're like going, it's not like a 3-year-old. Yeah. You can't see me anymore.
Right.
No, I see you. You just look foolish right now.
So it's more specific.
Yeah.
Community, we need to not be so selfish and take time to go through things that's going to help and not be selfish upon ourselves and I'm just going to dump it off
I
because
got rid
I
of
don't
it,
want
yeah.
it in my
Right,
car.
Right.
So I wanted
Yeah.
to mention
I don't
also
want your Saturdays left over from garage sale.
yes.
Right.
I wanted you guys to touch on socks because this is something that I learned through you guys that I was like, why that?
Yeah.
The color.
Yeah.
Why white socks?
And shoes too.
Yeah, there's two things here that
Yeah.
I get asked about a lot because everybody first they want to give us used socks. No, thank you.
Yeah, I
Socks
wouldn't
and
want to wear
underwear,
used.
yeah.
Come on.
Socks and underwear are
Okay,
the only two
picky
things
thing.
we demand be new. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
someone
Socks
said,
and
well, it's
underwear, yeah.
washed. I said, well, if I wash mine, would you want them? She goes, no. I said, well, what's the difference?
Very true.
Okay. Two things. One is we prefer to get white socks, either crew socks or what do you call the no-shows?
Yeah,
Ankle socks. And the reason white is because there's no dye in it. And a lot of our folks are diabetic. And if they get an open ulcer and they absorb that dye,
Because their feet get wet.
yes.
Right.
Secondly, the white socks let me know it's time to get rid of them.
Right.
When they're
Yeah.
dirty,
Yeah.
they're dirty. Okay. As far as shoes, we're always asking for like a running type or mesh style shoe.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because they're breathable and washable. I tell people all the time, you haven't lived until you've taken a homeless man's boot off or leather shoe off and their toes don't come with it. And I follow that up with, because I said gangrene is not all that offensive because it smells like almonds. And that's true.
Wow.
And we've actually
know that.
we've witnessed this.
Now you do.
Now
I'm
you
learning
know.
a lot.
And you're sitting there going, oh, I remember the first time it ever happened. It's happened more than once.
Wow.
I'm going, there's marbles in this shoe. And no, there's not. Those are toes.
Yeah.
Homeless people typically don't take off their shoes very often. You're really not even supposed to wear the same pair of shoes 2 days in a row. A lot of people don't know that.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm learning
They
so
said
much.
you should dry out your shoe. In fact, you should put a shoe, what do they call the shoe horn, the stretch?
Yeah.
In your shoe and let it dry before you use
Freshener,
it 2
yeah.
days later. Okay. Most people aren't going to do that, but wearing that same shoe, that shoe never has an opportunity to fully dry out, so it stays damp and bacteria builds in it.
Oh, yeah.
So for us to get leather shoes or dress shoes, it does us no good. We got to pass that on. But when we can get a pair of running shoes that all of you have in your closet because of last year, you were coming up on
Right.
this year's what do you call it when you make your
New Year's resolution.
New Year's
Yes.
resolution?
Yeah.
Hey, what I want your shoes from last year's resolution.
When you go buy new ones
Yeah,
this
when you
year.
go buy the new ones this year, because you're going to feel like this year's the year I'm motivated. But all kidding aside, a lot of used running shoes are no good for running anymore because the
Sure.
EVA material, the cushioning materials, it breaks down differently in each shoe. So a runner may not want to use it anymore to running, but it's perfect for our
still-
folks. So we love used running shoes, used walking shoes, but the mesh type.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you want to add something?
Well, and I was going to say, if we do get super, super nice stuff, we do put it in our boutique. So
so it's helpful that way
it,
too.
it can be, because that money does come back to Matthew's Hope.
Right.
Because we're going to turn around and invest it back into things that we do need. One great example, one of our supporters, part of his business is importing shoes. And what they'll happen is that they will get a bunch of shoes possibly at the end of the year. And I think we still have some in here now that are Italian shoes that are like $200 a pair. And I think we're selling them for $35.
Come quick.
Right.
They're going to
They're-
be gone
yeah.
now.
They'll be
And
gone now.
they're a great pair of shoes with
Yeah.
a pair of jeans. They're really sharp. They slip on. But that just makes no sense for our clientele. But we'll take that same money and then invest in the shoes that we have to get.
Right.
So speaking of money, where does all the money come from to support everything that Matthews Hope does? Because I can't imagine that it's
Yeah, our budget last year ended up being, I don't know if we call it a budget or not. It's more of what we went through.
Right.
It's better than calling it a budget. Was about $7.5 million, and that was just for our West Orange location. And it's tough. I will tell you, it's very tough right now because though our donor base is larger than it's ever been, the average donation is half of what it was prior to the pandemic. And so we're always looking for creative ways to create income for the ministry. No one's getting rich, I can assure you of that. And we're trying to help our staff and volunteers be as frugal as we know how to be without cutting corners on the services we do.
So people may look at an organization like Matthews Hope and it's growing, it's expanding, and they may feel that you have huge donors, but in reality, it's middle-class people like myself.
Yeah. Roughly about
So-
65% of our money are middle-class people, and I think part of it is because most of us that are middle class, we know how close we could be to being in a similar situation. Or we know someone who looked like they had the world by the tail, and then the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
Right.
and then the economy did whatever crapshoot it's taken right now.
So I feel we all can kind of do our part. A coffee is what, $8-9 now?
Oh my heavens.
And
Yeah,
it's insane.
it
But,
is,
like,
yeah.
What I'm just trying to think, like, there's so many in our Facebook community groups. There's so
Yeah.
many in Winter Garden or Orange County in general. If everybody went on the website and $5-10 even a month, I mean, of course more is, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, like, within my budget, I'm like, okay, what can I do? Like $5-10, you wouldn't even
You're not going to miss it.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't have a lot of money, but $5 or $10, like,
And that's
what
really
is,
where,
what is that to my family? I mean, that's going to help other families.
and
if we
it
all
means
did
we
that-
might be there for you if you ever need us, right?
It could, because
I
it
mean,
could happen.
this stuff does come around. I think that, to break it down to the ridiculous is what we used to call it when I was in sales and marketing. You really do break it down to that ridiculous number that if I didn't have this, would it change my life? This past year we did that $13 for 13 months for our 13th anniversary.
Yeah.
Would $13 really change anybody's life? And the truth is, the answer is yes. It may not change yours, but it could very well change somebody else's.
Right.
Wow.
And
That's
I
good.
think that's the point, is that two things have happened in the last couple of years. Number one is you have middle class folks that are spending $300 or $400 more a month for groceries than they were prior to the pandemic.
Definitely.
And that's our core donor.
Okay.
Then you have the folks that have done better with life for whatever reason. The challenges with them is they may have assets, but they're not necessarily liquid assets to where they're struggling just like everybody else is. Just that their struggle just looks a little bit different than ours does. And so we've gotten slammed from both directions. And I tell people I've aged more in the last 3 years than I have in the last 14, just trying to figure out how to stay one step ahead of that.
Right.
But at the same time, I can tell you that we do watch every penny. We have made every possible change to our properties to make them more efficient, whether it's going LED and putting everything on timers. We really try to be very good stewards of what's been given to us.
That's great. So everybody get on the website, right?
Yes.
And we can set up 5, 10, 20, 100 maybe monthly. Just set it and forget it, right?
Can you imagine? I mean, I know that in our case, we're nearing something like 15,000 followers on Facebook. Can you imagine if 15,000 people each did $10?
Wow.
It would change.
That would change.
That would be
it would
like-
change where we
It
sit
would
right
change
now.
our stress.
It would,
Right.
yeah, stress is a word we seem to use a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and people are thrown off by that but you're people of faith. And we are. I mean, Matthew's Hope is built on faith, but our humanness at times, when you're sitting there and you have a responsibility to make sure that all your employees get a paycheck as promised,
Right.
and that you can pay all your bills so you can care for those thousands of homeless people we're caring for each month, it can be a little bit overwhelming. It absolutely can. So, yeah, I mean, I would love to see that challenge put out there.
So let's do that. And to all those who already have that set up, thank you so much. To those of you who have visited the boutique, thank you. If you have not, I strongly encourage you to come in because it's a beautiful, beautiful store. Next week, we're going to visit with John, who is a graduate from the Moving Forward program. So I'm excited to see him again
He's got a
because
good story.
I have had toured a few things of what he does and what he's teaching. So I'm excited to share that with you guys. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you guys next time.